In the near future, NASCAR may begin stripping dates from tracks with poor attendance and invest instead into new ideas like street courses. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're excited for tomorrow night's Groovy Hollow 200, the iRacing event that I'm putting together with AE Engine and Podium Esports to benefit Extra Life. I've seen many of you try to guess who the mystery driver of the Halloween machine is, but you'll have to tune in tomorrow night to find out for sure. In the meantime, we're already giving away some prizes. If you head to GroovyHollowRaceway.com, you can vote for your favorite paint scheme that's going to run in tomorrow night's race for a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. And tomorrow night during the live stream, we'll be giving away a ton of Out of the Groove Groovy Motorsports bags, some Noah Gragson, Lionel Racing diecast, and much more. So I hope to see you all there tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It'll be right here on this channel live, the Groovy Hollow 200. But in today's video, we're talking about real world NASCAR news, specifically the future. Earlier this week, Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal published an article featuring Ben Kennedy, NASCAR executive, and Kennedy revealed some of NASCAR's future plans. He revealed that they have sort of a 10-year plan. They're looking ahead to what the sport will look like in 2031. It'll be here before we know it, talking about new markets, possibly racing in foreign countries outside of the United States. But yesterday, Adam Stern got everyone talking when he tweeted this. He reports that NASCAR's hinted that it's going to strip more poor-performing tracks of their races in the coming years, and it's preparing to invest heavily in new ideas like a street race. That got a lot of folks talking. First thing I thought was, is this it? Is this possibly the end of Texas Motor Speedway? I wouldn't get too hyped up yet, Texas haters. It sounds like NASCAR would first look at NASCAR-owned tracks now that they own ISC. They own a lot of speedways. Texas is an SMI track, so I wouldn't get too excited just yet. But I mentioned Texas there because it feels like this conversation has picked back up in the last week or so, ever since the Cup Series playoff race at Texas a week and a half ago saw, quite frankly, dismal attendance. A track that less than 20 years ago was capable of bringing in over 150,000 fans twice a year saw, I don't know, maybe 20,000 fans, 30 if I'm being generous. That caught everyone's attention, including NASCAR President Steve Phelps. I read an article by Dustin Long from NBC Sports yesterday, and Denny Hamlin dropped this quote in there. Hamlin says, "I certainly think he," Steve Phelps, who apparently Hamlin talked to last week, saw Texas last week and was like, "That's absolutely unacceptable. Whether we've got to work with them or audit them, whatever it might be, we've got to fix the promotion side of things. Certainly, I think that everyone could be held to a higher standard, especially the tracks, given the revenue they have." That point from Hamlin there is really the big thing we should talk about in this video. The business model around NASCAR racetracks is a bit perplexing. It seems to disincentivize the exact thing you would expect a racetrack, a venue, to care about the most, and that is ticket sales, actually selling tickets. It doesn't disincentivize selling tickets, but it drops that down the list. It becomes much less of a priority than we would expect it to be. Let me explain exactly what I mean. Actually, let me let Dustin Long in that NBC Sports article explain exactly what I mean. You know, every NASCAR track, at least as far as I know, is privately owned, so their finances are not publicly available, except Dover. Dover Motorsports is a publicly traded company, so their financial information at the end of every year, their tax information is, I believe, publicly available. So from NBC Sports, this was that Dustin Long article. In 2019, the last season before the COVID-19 pandemic, track records show that Dover recorded $4.9 million in admission revenue while collecting $34.2 million in broadcasting revenue. Contracts with tracks stipulate that tracks keep 65% of its broadcast revenue and put 25% of that revenue into the race purse for teams. NASCAR keeps 10% of the broadcast money. So let's break that down for just a moment. 65% is what Dover ultimately gets to keep. The company Dover Motorsports, who owns Dover International Speedway and actually also owns Nashville Super Speedway, but they didn't race at Nashville Super Speedway in 2019. That company gets to keep 65% of the $34.2 million they brought in from the TV revenue, which by my calculations means Dover Motorsports kept $22 million in revenue from the TV contract. 25% went into the purse money, which comes out to about $8.5 million, which you have to divide by 2 because Dover hosted 2 Cup Series races in 2019. And then you divide that number by, roughly 36, 40, however you want to do it. I don't know exactly how they allocated the purse money back in 2019. I know the charter teams have always been the priority since that system was put into place. But therein lies the problem. In 2019, Dover made about $22 million in revenue from TV money. Meanwhile, they made only $4.9 million in ticket sales. So when you compare the two, racetracks are getting so much money from the TV contract, they are not incentivized to worry about at-track promotion, the at-track experience, getting fans to actually buy tickets, because in the grand scheme of things, ticket sale money is a fairly small chunk. It's a fairly small piece of the entire pie. Why spend extra money out of your own pockets to promote something that isn't going to make that big of a difference when it comes to your bottom line at the end of the day? It seems like a backward system. You'd think a venue would care most about getting people to go to the venue, not how many people watch the venue on TV. It doesn't seem to make much sense, but that's the way business works with these racetracks right now. Now, another interesting tidbit of information I read in that Dustin Long piece is that NASCAR's reportedly added some sort of minimum attendance clause to many of their recent sanctioning agreements. And again, from Dustin Long, according to a Dover Motorsports filing, promoters are required at cup races to use best efforts to ensure minimum spectator attendance of at least 70% of capacity of the facility. Now that every race is back to 100% capacity, I wonder when or if that clause will start to kick in once again. Well, it sounds like NASCAR, according to that initial Adam Stern report, is beginning to lose their patience. And I think Texas a couple weeks ago was that breaking point. I read this Denny Hamlin quote in an Associated Press article by Jenna Fryer where Hamlin said, "I think the tracks just have not been held to a high enough standard when it comes to promotion. I think they've just really dropped the ball, and a lot of it is just because attendance is such a small part of the revenue and it's not a needle mover for them." I remember just last week we reacted to another quote from Denny Hamlin where he said NASCAR needs to look at the way F1 handles, hospitality and create sort of a party-like atmosphere around its events. So Hamlin's been talking about this for a while now. Let's start there, because NASCAR tracks do desperately need to improve the at-track experience, and soon. Sure, some at-track elements had begun to dissolve in recent years, even before the pandemic, but since the pandemic, the quality of the fan experience at the track has taken a serious nosedive, and it's not showing any signs of bouncing back in a resounding way. With so many one-day shows this year, drivers just aren't at the track for as long as they have been in years past. In years past, drivers would be at the track Thursday night through Sunday night, and Friday and Saturday when there's just a couple practice sessions or a qualifying session, they'd have plenty of time to go out into the campgrounds or do driver appearances outside the track or go around the market and do a sponsor appearance at one of their stores nearby or do a fan meet and greet, things like that. Those don't exist anymore. Some of it for reasonable pandemic-related reasons, especially like last year or earlier this year, driver safety, fan safety, all that type of stuff, great. But at this point, there is much less of an excuse for not having those things than there was, say, a year ago. So that's hurt the at-track experience because there's far fewer opportunities for fans to perhaps meet or get an autograph from their favorite drivers. And this is starting to become a problem even before the pandemic. Like Brad Keselowski, again, that Jenna Fryer article let slip this interesting little bit of information during one of his quotes. He said, "When I first started coming to the races before the broadcast was so important, it was more about the events. You could go to the Midway and it felt like you were at a fair. It's not that way anymore." And then he went on to comment about how the tracks charge the drivers a significant amount of money to bring their merch haulers and park them outside the facility. Here's what he said about that. "I'm not going to pay 40 grand to sign autographs for you to collect the ticket money. That makes no sense. Until those things change, there's at least from my side a complete demotivation to do those things." Y'all can call Keselowski cheap, whatever. And I understand to have a booth or to have an appearance outside the racetrack, that does cost some money, but $40,000 to park your merch hauler outside the track, that does seem a bit steep to me. And so I can kind of understand Brad Keselowski and Team Penske. Now I start to understand why, Team Penske only has one merch hauler. They don't have, one for every driver. It's all condensed into one. Same for most of Hendrick or Joe Gibbs Racing now. Now I sort of get it. If that's really the kind of prices that tracks are charging them for that space, whoa. But that's another thing that needs to change. We need drivers to be more accessible. Once again, we need more at-track, on-track activity Friday through Sunday. That's something that hopefully next year gets a little better as abbreviated practice and qualifying sessions start to return more frequently. I wish there was more, but I'll take what I can get at this point. We also need more events in the market itself. I think what NASCAR did with Nashville this year, they had teams like Trackhouse out on the Strip a couple days before the race. Or not the Strip, what do they call it? Broadway? Whatever the thing in Nashville is called. I thought that was great. They did that whole promotion with that one bar downtown. We need more of that in more markets. I thought what Formula One did a couple weeks ago, while NASCAR was in Fort Worth, just across the road in Dallas, I think Red Bull Racing did some sort of like burnout in downtown Dallas, had a bunch of fans out there, got the entire public's attention, got the whole city's attention. NASCAR needs to do more burnouts on the Las Vegas Strip, things like that. That needs to become a trend once again, not during the off season, but like leading up to the race weekend. We need to see that more than, once every 2 or 3 years. I don't want to come down completely on the tracks. I think many tracks have done good things to try and improve the at-track experience for fans. Like many tracks have installed like bars and things over in the grandstands. Obviously some tracks have taken out rows of seats and added tables or counters or whatever you want to call them to put your gear. They've given fans a little more space to spread out. Tracks like Talladega, Phoenix have completely renovated their infield garage experience and they're quite fantastic. So I don't want to come down too hard on the tracks. They have made some efforts, but they're not making enough, especially when it comes to, as Denny Hamlin's mentioned, the promotional side of things. We don't have guys like Humpy Wheeler anymore, who was, go big, go home. He was one of those kinds of classic promoters. Eddie Gossage was sort of that way with Texas Motor Speedway, and he just retired this year. We need more of that. If tracks are going to eat so much of the TV money, some amount of that, a larger percentage of that needs to be put towards promotion. So I hope NASCAR does in many ways begin enforcing that minimum attendance clause that they're adding to these sanctioning agreements. And maybe a track like Texas Motor Speedway, I know they're talking about severely reducing the capacity there. Maybe that's a loophole, maybe it doesn't work out. I'd love to see NASCAR go to new venues that perhaps do get the fan turnout that tracks like Texas Motor Speedway, unfortunately, are not getting these days. And that leads me to my final point. NASCAR should focus on big events, individual events. Like this year, I loved what they did with Bristol Dirt in many ways. I was skeptical going in. I still am a little skeptical going forward. I wish it didn't have to happen at Bristol, but I love that there's a dirt race on the schedule now. I think that's great. It's different. It's unique. It's an event. The Daytona 500 is obviously always a big deal. That is the one big event NASCAR always seems to get right. This year, I thought Road America on July 4th. Many were skeptical going in, including myself. I was there in person and it was huge. It was a big deal. That was a success. When it comes to next year, I'm all for them trying out the LA Memorial Coliseum Clash. I already got my ticket. And going back to that first tweet from Adam Stern, I'm all for a street race. I've been saying it since the summer when rumors of Chicago perhaps getting a street course sooner rather than later began to emerge. Make it happen. I want to see it. I think it's genius. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a no-brainer. I know many of you guys are going to shout in the comments at me for saying that last sentence, but yes, NASCAR needs a street race as soon as they can possibly get it in a major market. I'm sorry, but in 2021, it's hard to get 60, 70, 100,000 fans to drive an hour outside of town to whatever oval track is on the schedule that week. If NASCAR can swing it, it's a no-brainer to bring the action to the people, especially if it's a big market like Chicago. It may not be thought of as a NASCAR market, but it's a sports town, it's a big town. A NASCAR street race in Chicago is a no-brainer. I really hope it happens. I know it's not happening next year, but 2023, 24, oh my goodness, I really hope it happens. But keep it special. Again, big individual events. Don't flood the schedule with street courses. One is good. One dirt race is good. Don't oversaturate the schedule, or one day you'll be in the same predicament you're in now with all these mile-and-a-half tracks we don't know what to do with. We don't want to be in a similar position 10, 15 years from now. So keeping things fresh, I'm all for, particularly when it comes to schedule. There are certain elements of NASCAR I don't think should change regularly. I think the playoff format, they should either stick with what they have now for the next 20, 30 years or go back to a Winston Cup style format. They shouldn't do any other major tweaks to it, or else fans will continue to lose confidence and lose credibility for what NASCAR is trying to do. But tracks, a schedule, that's something that I think should change with a decent amount of regularity. I've said this before, but I think NASCAR is doing a fairly good job at striking an even balance. For fans that want new things, changes, there's more road courses. Obviously the LA Clash next year, the possibility of a street course. But then for fans who want NASCAR to return to its roots, there's an emphasis being put on short tracks. Auto Club Speedway is being turned into a short track. There's still real discussions around National Fairgrounds Speedway, possibly North Wilkesboro Speedway. Ben Kennedy talked a little bit about that as well. Gateway next year is a shorter oval in the Midwest. So for old school fans who want NASCAR to return to the beating and banging of short tracks, you've got plenty of options coming your way there. And a couple big potential possibilities as well. I like this balance NASCAR's trying to strike. And even if they do eventually end up tilting a little more into the new category, the new ideas, at least I feel like nearly every new schedule change NASCAR has proposed will suit the new next-gen car very, very well. So overall, I think NASCAR is heading the right direction. It's hard to change fast, especially when you're a big company like NASCAR that has so many different groups you have to answer to, sponsors you have to answer to, fans you have to answer. There's so many different people chattering, talking, shouting at NASCAR. When you're as big as NASCAR is, you can't change everything all at once. You gotta take things a year at a time and make as many changes as you can that you see fit, that you see moving the sport in a better direction in the future. But overall, While I completely support what many of the drivers and many of the fans have said, the at-track experience needs to improve. For years, I've told my friends, I've told everybody that going to a NASCAR race will change your life, that's what hooked me onto the sport. And in many ways, I think that's still true. Just feeling the rumble, the horsepower, all the cars thundering by in a group, in a pack, I think that is an incredible experience that few other sporting events are able to replicate. But we have to find new ways to promote these events so that we get fans in those seats and they can experience that firsthand. That's the point. So I'm with all the drivers, I'm with many of the fans. Tracks need to do a better job at promoting. I hope NASCAR starts to hold some of these tracks accountable and make changes where they need to. Anyway, y'all, I know the last few episodes I've done, I feel like I've rambled on and on, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Thank you so much for watching. That's gonna do it. If you're new to the channel and you like talking all things NASCAR, be sure to subscribe. We do this just about every day here on Out of the Groove. And as always, a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters as well. I couldn't do this show without your tremendous support each and every month. Groovy Hollow 200 tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I hope to see you all there. Thanks for watching this video.